Long before I ever learned about music or harmony or melody, I learned that sometimes it's okay to not have any music at all. There's a game soundtrack that taught me more about music than any music class ever did. In 1994, I was video game crazy. At that time, I was really big into Sonic the Hedgehog, NBA Jam, of course Super Mario Brothers. But my newest obsession was the Final Fantasy series that I discovered a couple of years prior. And later on that year, I discovered Final Fantasy III for Super Nintendo. And little did I know, whenever I put that game into my Super Nintendo, it would change me in a lot of ways. I had limited exposure to the game because I didn't own it quite yet, but I could go visit my cousin Adam who had it and experience everything the game had to offer. You have to remember, this is long before YouTube or anything else was around. And it looked like your standard Final Fantasy fare. A blue menu screen, your allies on the right, enemies on the left. It's a standard setup. But it wasn't until October of 1995, when I got a copy of it for myself, that I didn't realize that I was about to change my whole life as soon as I put that cartridge in my Super Nintendo. You see, at that time, I could play drums and I could at least hold a melody, not necessarily sing. And I was a huge fan of the Beatles, all of those British invasion bands, and just getting into contemporary music of the time. And of course I hit New Game, experienced the intro cutscene, and made it through the first part of the game no problem, but not really paying attention to the music, more so the story at this point. I was falling in love with the characters and their quirks and their differences between one another, and I was figuring out the strengths and weaknesses of each one. And then there's a moment in the game when everything comes together, but the enemy wins. You lose. And for the next 5 to maybe 20 minutes, there's no soundtrack at all. The only thing you hear is the crashing waves as you're stranded on an island. And I don't want to spoil anything, but depending upon how fast you are, you immediately deal with the loss of a character. You find a raft, and then you go to the next continent, not knowing what you're gonna find. And that's when your TV speakers actually play something for the first time in a while. And what came from my TV speakers was haunting, desolate sounding, almost isolated. See, at this point, you've spent so much time learning where places are, learning where characters came from, learning where people live. The entire world, by that point, was very familiar to you. And now it's not. You have no points of reference. The islands don't look the same. You don't know where to go. You don't know if your fellow party members have lived or not. And you don't even really know what your goal is right now. It doesn't help that the enemies in this area completely slap you around. And by the time you find a town way off in the distance, you're pretty beaten up and low on resources. So you stumble into town, where you come across a familiar face. And from that point forward, you keep gathering party members until you find the airship. And when you find that airship, a song plays. And that song is called Searching for Friends. Now, the reason this song means a lot to me is for a number of reasons. First of all, because of the chord structure, there's just a glimmer of hope in it, where most of the song is in a minor key, which, for those of you who don't know music, minor key indicates sadness, usually 9 times out of 10. But right after the loop, it goes to a major key. And in that section, the dissonance between the melody and the bass line create tension. And that's a tension that you can feel. And finally, it sort of resolves. But in the moment, that music lifts you up just a little bit. Maybe all your friends are alive. Maybe the world hasn't been completely destroyed yet. Maybe there is still a goal, even if you don't know what that is yet. And my favorite part about that is that's the song that plays as you traverse the world map in different ways, whether you're on the airship or on foot. That's the song that plays. It replaces the song from before that felt very isolated, very desolate. And so you eventually find Terra, who learns what love actually is. You find Mog deep in the caves. You battle some dragons. You go across the world multiple times. You fight creatures who are mutated and don't look right. And then collectively, your entire party realizes that it should go back after Kefka, the main antagonist from before. Hearing Searching for Friends for the first time made me realize that music plays a huge role in a lot of things. So instead of venturing forth and beating the game, I restarted, this time paying attention to every single note. And what I've realized is that most every theme has a negative or sad counterpart. There's a character that you meet in the very beginning of the game called Locke, and his theme is very heroic sounding. And as you go forth in the game, you learn about Locke's life and his story, ultimately learning about a character named Rachel. And Rachel's a very sad story. And to really drive that home, the game takes Locke's theme, slows it down, and puts it in a minor key. If you want to go back through the game and experience all these story points and all this stuff, or if you just want to listen to the soundtrack itself to sort of gather what I'm talking about, it's readily available across platforms, ready for you to listen to at any given point. And as I made my way through the game as a child, I learned how to harmonize with the game. And as I sat for hours and hours and hours playing this game, I would sing songs along with it. I would create counter melodies. I would learn the bass lines to everything. I would get wrapped up in the music just as much as I would get wrapped up into the game itself. And I think that's when you know when you have a very successful soundtrack. And with the release of the Pixel Remaster, the soundtrack got revamped just a little bit. Now, a lot of players of the OG games, some of them complain about the soundtrack, but I actually think it's a huge addition to it. And of course, I went straight to Searching for Friends to hear what the differences were between it and the original version. And I gotta say, truthfully and honestly, the Pixel Remaster version of Searching for Friends, it kind of takes over the original. I still love the original with all of me, but I think the new version is a bit more powerful. It doesn't sound as desolate, it doesn't sound as isolated, but it sounds a bit more powerful. There's a bit more behind it. It goes without saying that a lot of Final Fantasy fans really feel like FF6 is the best one. I am one of those people. And people talk about how good the soundtrack is, but they don't necessarily go into why it changed them. For me, I went from knowing rudimentary level sort of drums, basic idea of melody, to now I can harmonize, now I can create counter melody. Now I understand how to create sadness and how to take somebody out of that sadness. How to build tension between the melody and, let's say, a bass line, for instance. That soundtrack has done nothing but help me in my life, and I still listen to it every now and then when I'm not playing the game. And if there's a soundtrack that's had the same effect on you, please leave it in a comment. I would love to listen to it. Where music classes taught me a rigid structure, the FF6 soundtrack taught me how to feel. And I think there's a big difference between the two, although I feel like both are needed. But that's my story, just with a small percentage of the Final Fantasy VI soundtrack. A soundtrack that still plays through my head in the quiet moments of my day. And if you take the time to listen to it, I hope that it does the same for you. And if you do listen to it, make sure to use a decent pair of headphones and just sort of escape for a while. Thank you for watching.